Okay, good.
All right, good morning. It's Wednesday, January 25th, and we're here with another in our introductions and scope of work conversations with people who we will be seeing often during the next 2 years. So with us this morning, we have representatives from Champlain Housing Trust and Evernorth here today to discuss what they're doing now, where they fit into the equation of all the folks that we've been talking to. We've seen Chris Donnelly before. We'll meet Michael Monti today and Kathy Byer. But let's go ahead and get started right away. Michael, please join us.
I was told not to leave a ring.
Michael, you're the enviable position of, well, first of all, having served with Champlain Housing Trust for a long time, but also succeeding someone else who ran Champlain Housing Trust above you for some time. And so I'm always, you seem to be surviving past the legend.
Well, we worked together for decades earlier and during, while I was at Champlain Housing Trust. So we've been colleagues and friends, and
it was a smooth transition. So we're going to start by going around the circle of the table. Representative Tom Stevens from Waterbury.
Joe Parsons, represent Groton, Topsom, and Newbury.
Emily Krasno, South Burlington.
Ashley Bartley, Fairfax in Georgia.
Caleb Elder, Bristol area.
Dennis Abounding, Linden, Sutton, Newark, Sheffield, and Wheelock.
I guess.
I'm Elizabeth Burrows. I represent Windsor 1, which is Heartland, West Windsor, and Windsor.
I'm Larry Labram, representing Essex, Orleans.
I'm Mary Howard. I represent Rutland City District 6.
And Robin Chestnut Tandrum in Rutland Bennington District.
Thanks, Michael Monti. I'm the CEO of Champlain Housing Trust. Thanks for inviting us here. I have a presentation, of course, and I hope that I can get through it quickly, as well as so that we could hear from the rest and be able to answer your questions. But my job here today is to give you an overview of Champlain Housing Trust, to tell you a little bit more about the work that we do, but also talk about some of the NeighborWorks organizations and what they're doing around the state of Vermont. And so I'll do that really as quickly as I can, as efficiently as I can.
And Michael, a lot of us are new to the committee in general, so while we may know our own lingo,
okay,
the jargon busting light up,
right.
And actually, just if you could start before you even get into specifically stuff, if you could just give us a quick one. We've got it from Gus a little bit, but can you tell us what a NeighborWorks organization is?
Okay, it is in the presentation, but I will say that there is a national NeighborWorks organization that supports over 250 or so organizations around the country. Vermont has a fairly robust framework and network that does this, but we are really everywhere from San Diego all the way up into Maine. All doing different things, all doing housing of different kinds of things. Some focus on some multifamily rental, which is what we do at home ownership. Others do other things, but it's a network of organizations. Very good organization, very solid, federally funded, but separate from the federal government in terms of how it gets its funds and how we operate. And I'll do a little bit of that as well. Can you see it? I can't tell. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's see. Now, come on. Go down. Let's. There we go. Good. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate the help. Champlain Housing Trust is a fairly large nonprofit for the state of Vermont. We serve northwestern Vermont, Franklin, Grand Isle, Chittenden County. As you can see, we're fairly large in terms of number of apartments, in terms of staffing. We do really a wide range of housing services, and I'll talk about briefly what we do. But it's a fairly deep organization. Right now, we're counting 146 positions. We're still hiring, but we're a fairly large organization, as they could have state of Vermont. We really do everything from homelessness to home ownership. We believe strongly that people need to be safe and secure in the context of their housing. And homelessness is some work that we've been doing lately, especially over the last 10 years. But we believe strongly in the opportunity that homeownership brings. And so we really bring a wide variety of programs and services in order to accomplish that in the area that we're serving. So this is an illustration that sort of brings that to light. You can see at homelessness, we do everything from operating motels and actually in contract with the state of Vermont to services such as SASH and resident services and other kinds of programs. So we do transitional homes, motels, and also services for people who are in homelessness. We do a lot of rental housing, and we really have a wide range of different types of rental housing. We have, smaller, we have scattered site homes throughout, say Burlington, and we have larger buildings in different cities and towns across Northwest Vermont. Market rate rentals. And at the same time, as people are in their homes, we're also providing support. We want people to be successful. We don't evict people unless they deserve eviction. Let's just say that. Okay. If people get behind in rent, we support them. So we have a range of programs to make sure that people are successful and don't fail in our housing. And then home ownership. Shared equity homes is something that I'm focusing on, but mobile home lending is something we've been doing since Irene came through the state of Vermont. If you recall back through Irene, most of the state had a really serious damage. We had actually no damage in Northwest Vermont. So we raised our hand and said, is there something we could do? And we started a manufacturing home down payment assistance program, really getting manufactured homes in better shape, better sort of a second loan in order to get people into more energy efficient homes.
Just a quick interjection here. So mobile homes are manufactured homes, almost the same thing, not quite, but almost the same thing.
Yeah.
It represents a certain percentage of our affordable housing.
Yes.
And a lot of the parks were built alongside rivers when riversides were considered gristle and nobody else wanted to develop there, which is why they were on a percentage basis hurt a lot more during Tropical Storm Irene. And the people we're going to have a mobile home primer soon, but just the idea that folks who generally live in mobile homes have a really hard time getting loans for mobile homes because banks don't know whether they're cars or buildings.
That's right. So there's the program that we have is a second mortgage. They get a first mortgage. We work with all the banks and the credit unions who do this lending. We come in second, and we really provide the opportunity for them to get a really well made, energy efficient new home that they could afford. When they sell it, or if they sell it, it gets transferred on. We hold on to the loan itself so that people don't have to pay us back, but it stays essentially with the property. It's a good program. It's solid, and it's been really, really good for mobile homes across the state. I'll talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to get stuck on this.
Actually, I'd rather just have you just ask me a bunch of questions. I'd be happy with that.
So I know most commercial lenders won't loan on a mobile home older than 20 years. Do you address that?
Yeah, so we really are not doing retrofit for existing mobile homes because often enough, it's just not worth the value, and it's really best if it's over 20 years. We may wind up doing some help with some improvements to skirting or foundations to that kind of thing, but we're really not. Our program really is going to try to say that folks, at this point, an investment in this home is better that you sort of do something. We're going to wind up being, more affordable ultimately. For folks, especially when we take into consideration that we're usually jumping the energy standards pretty high, and we're getting people to reduce the cost of heating, which is the biggest issue I think for mobile home living. With that, here is an impact of what we did in the past year. You could sort of see that we've had 250 apartments. I actually had some written notes for myself somewhere in there's to remind me of some of the things I wanted to say. As you can see, we had a decent level of turnover. You see that? Yeah, thank you so much. Let me remind me where I am. Excellent. Thank you. So over 250 families live in our rental housing right now, which is pretty good, big, from group homes to apartments. And then in the past year, CHT housed a little over 200 new families in our properties. And right now, because we've had a focus on homeless, over 450 formerly homeless families live in our housing. So we're taking a bite out of it. We just opened up Zephyr Place, which we got some generous support from the state. And we moved 38 homeless families into that building. Now, Zephyr was a property which we redeveloped with Evernorth. And that concentration of homeless folks means also we're bringing resident services to those people so they could be successful. But our focus over the last handful of years is to try to bring people who are homeless out of the motel system, which is very expensive, out of the streets, which is not great for communities, and into permanent housing where they can be successful. Let's see. Overall, we're just committed to making homeless rare and brief. Now, here's what I want to say about this one. Here's a photo of Stewart Avenue, which is in Colchester. This development, again, working with Evernorth, is being done by SD Ireland. And I think it's important for folks to understand that as a nonprofit, even as we are, you can give money to us, we'll accept gifts as charitable giving. Often enough, we are working with private developers all the time. There is no end to the number of folks who we are constantly working with who are developing property here or there in South Burlington, throughout Chittenden County, Franklin County, St. Albans, who are talking to us and saying, you want to co-develop this with us? Or do you want to take a part of what we're doing and make it work? Integrating low-income people, moderate income and upper middle income people, but also just sort of moving a project forward. This one here is typical Stewart Avenue with SDR and Colchester. And again, every development we've done over the last 5 or 10 years has private sector involvement in some respect.
And Mike, before you may tell me if you're going to have a slide on this, but just moving 38 families that are experiencing homelessness into apartments is laudable, but what services other than simply the four walls
Sure.
providing through or helping people get aligned with so that they can stay there?
It's a solid question. So before the pandemic, literally January 2020, we had 2 or 3 people, a couple of staff people and 2 people who did resident services. We now have about 13 or 14 people doing that work. All right. Meaning that we've found is that in order for folks to be successful, we need to bring in some additional support. We can't do it just by giving people 4 walls. I think there's the whole housing first concept is good. Get people to housing, but we think of it as getting people to housing and services right away. And what we've done is we built these developments which have some amount of income that comes from the development itself to support sort of resident services, or at least one person who is there, who's backed up by a team in other locations. Now, I would say that also just broadly, we could solve it building by building, but there needs to be a systems change around how resident services are delivered to people who are lower and moderate income, people who are, basically struggling in mental health issues or addiction issues to get them into, be successful. That's going to take a systems-wide change, I think, at a state level. This is for you, I'm doing this for you. For the family SASH kind of concept, I think that's sort of out there right now, where we can bring people additional services across systems. At Zephyr, we did it with that particular property. And on occasion, when we have a concentration of people who are homeless, we will bring and make sure there is a property manager, maintenance person, and a resident services person there. And they're usually connecting them to Turning Point, which does a lot of work on addiction, and really try to keep people sober and really being eyes and ears on a regular basis. So it's really something that we've actually built and leaned into a lot more over especially the last few years. That's where the growth has been sometimes with our staffing. So here's the CHT multifamily development projects as of January. As you can see, we have some things in pre-development. We are assembling. We have some things under construction. We've just completed that section of Zephyr Place I was talking about. But you see the 256 assembling financing. That means we are still working on bringing those resources together. And here's the pitch I bring to you. At least a few of those properties are developed, but at least this one here in the middle of downtown Burlington has not yet got all the resources it needs in order to be built. Okay, and what I would say is that that particular property, as well as others, are on our we'd like to do list, all right? There's at least 280 other apartments that we know of that we could move on, but knowing that we don't have the resources to do that. If you heard the pitch from us saying that we needed additional funds at some point, we needed to have some short-term funds this year to make some demands as well as next year, it's because these projects are waiting for those resources. They have not yet received them. And so we could actually bring in with this property, another 350 new apartments to our region over the next couple of years if we knew the resources were there. So having said all that, I would say this past year, we did quite a bit of work, but over 6 years, different types of projects, construction, rehab, motels, we've done quite a bit. And again, I'll say that reason why we're able to do that is because of that bond that was done a handful of years ago. It was a critical cash infusion, as well as the Corona relief funds that came in, as well as the ARPA funds. Those are the things that have enabled us, I think, to build more than we've typically done historically. So I can't really underemphasize how important it is for the legislature, which has been very generous. Its support has been for development of affordable housing, certainly through our region. And I can tell you that throughout the state of Vermont. Quickly, Butternut grows. There's 20 condominiums we built. And Winooski, the city of Winooski gave us the land. And this is a shared equity home ownership. And I'm going to describe what shared equity home ownership does. These were 3 bedrooms. They're beautiful, built by Snyder Homes. Again, Snyder Homes, if you know who they are a premier single family home developer who we've partnered with now over the last 5 or 6 years and doing some great developments. We hired them to assist us with this one. They brought in some design in terms of them knowing the home ownership and helped us get us through the process in terms of the building of this itself. We brought in new tax credits that are not available in the state of Vermont. So we really this is a fairly unique project in terms of development. You're not seeing a lot of new condominium developments being built in the state. Again, home ownership projects, again, a decent number and a lot more on the horizon if we knew resources were there. Yes.
I was just gonna say that the Winooski, excuse me, condominiums, I have a friend and they were just tears in their eyes that they finally were able to make homeownership a reality after decades of renting. Just really wonderful. It's just wonderful.
That's great. They're really beautiful apartments.
Nice. Yeah.
F-35s can be pretty loud. They're actually built in a way that you can't really hear them. So you can still have your F-35s in your housing too. At least in Winooski.
We've heard already that in private development anyway, that developing condominiums has been difficult over the last half generation or so because banks are tightening
That's right.
in terms of having to have a certain number sold before the project gets underway and can be funded. Did you have a problem with that, or was it a question of the unique funding method?
We had new market tax credits, which is something that's not used for home ownership very much, and you had to be in certain districts for it to happen. So that provided us a certain amount of equity, plus VHCB and VHFA both brought in some additional equity. So there was some risk here. Matter of fact, we expected that we would take a year to sell them all, just being safe. They were priced at $160,000, $170,000. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, really beautifully done. We were sold before we were finished painting the outside. So we did well in terms of that. So we understood what the market was. We have a lot of demand for shared equity home ownership, a lot of demand for home ownership in general. So we felt a little bit more comfortable putting some, having some risk. And there was enough other resources there. We went to not a private bank, but we have a community development financial institution that we went to that brought up the money. So in order for us to do that. So, we have relationships with lenders that are different than perhaps some of the private sector folks do.
Well, here in Central Vermont with Down Street, I was on the board of Down Street for a little while, and one of the issues that came up when we were doing, and this was just as I was leaving the board, was the Taylor Street projects over the garage, over the bus station, and the French Street project, the French block apartments, which were the ones that were empty for 80 years. And there was this worry that the risk was about 80 apartments are coming online at roughly the same time. Will this community ever fill it?
Yeah.
And the answer was very similar. They were pretty much filled on pace with how they could have opened it. There was never a time where they felt in the first 6 months after they opened that they couldn't rent the apartments.
And I think that we've had the same thing with multifamily rental, where we could sort of say we're doing lease up. We bring a team of folks in there, making sure people can get in, and we could usually lease it up within a week or two. We have 300 people a month asking us to get into our housing. 300 applications a month. Our waiting list to get into our rental properties is 14 months more or less, a time period. So demand is huge, right, on the rental side. And on the home ownership side, there's pent up demand as well. And the way we're doing it, we are able to sort of price it. It works for us. I know I'm running out of time, and I want.
I'm just like, let's we put a wet blanket on our curiosity.
We could stay late if you want. It's up to you. So again, I wanted to sort of say the way we do our home ownership is through shared equity. We offer long-term leases of covenant. So we basically take resources, different resources, and when we sell it to an individual, we reduce the price significantly. So let's say we go from $300,000 to $150,000. That $150,000 stays with the property essentially. When somebody sells it, they could sell it for all the mortgage money if they paid off. Any appreciation they get, they share with us. And then the improvements they get that as well. But it basically protects the public investment. It is really an affordable way to ensure affordability forever. It enables us to have a pool of houses that we're constantly able to provide homeownership to. We have 761 people in homeownership, but 671 people in homeownership. But in fact, we've had more than 1,200 or 1,300 people achieve homeownership with us. People move into the private market. Usually after a handful of years, like anybody else, we move 5 or 6 years. That's typical. That happens here as well. People move into the private market and be able to sort of basically these become, in many ways, affordable starter homes for people. That's how it kind of works for a lot of folks. Go ahead.
Forgive me.
It's okay. You're forgiven.
I'll never be forgiven. What does long-term land lease mean?
Okay, so we wind up with either homes on land or homes and condominiums. On land, we will retain title to the home, and then we give you essentially a lease to the land forever. Just forever.
Okay.
It really just goes to 99 years and then renew it forever. And so you are winding up. You actually don't pay us. You pay us a little bit of money just to sort of show good faith. But for the most part, that's what the land lease is. So we retain title to the land. Maybe condominiums, we just put it into the mortgage documents. So people, basically we have a covenant that says you just can't sell it to anybody you want at a huge profit. We can't sell it to you for 150 and then you turn around a year later and sell it for 400,000. See, wait a minute, where'd all that public investment money go? We keep it, share it for the next family so that they could achieve affordability. So it's not one time, it's forever. And that's how we sort of think about it. So that's the benefit to the community.
Okay.
We preserve affordability. We have access to home ownership to many, many folks over generations. For the benefit of the homeowners, you have security. You could pass it on to your children. You have tax benefits. You have legacy. You could do what you want. We don't ask everybody every year how much you make. If you make a lot of money, great. You want to stay in the home, great. We have people who have died in their homes, just decades. We have people who moved on and bought another home someplace else or moved like any other homeowner. So, and there's usually benefit as anything of getting some appreciation, getting some savings that homeownership provides. Where I'm running out of time here, so we have 5 different loan programs. We do a couple of the ones that you're familiar with, VHIP, of course, the manufactured home loan program that we talked about, home repairs, and the farm worker program, which has been really, really good, I think, in terms of working with supporting farm laborers. And a homeownership equity program provides down payment assistance to people of color. NeighborWorks of Vermont, very quickly. These are the 5 organizations. These are the areas they covered. As you see throughout the state, Down Street in central Vermont, Rural Edge up north, Wyndham, Windsor down south, and NeighborWorks of Western Vermont on the west side. I would say that the organizations overall really do different kinds of things, but one of the things we do together in collaboration is counseling and education, which is a very important part of what we do. We believe strongly that people at least get some support in counseling and education. They can come and buy one of our homes, they can go and be a renter somewhere else, but as long as they get counseling and education in order to be successful, that's the key part. It's kind of missing somewhere in our educational system, I guess. But people don't know how to buy a home often enough. So we'll counsel people to do that. And amongst the groups, that is a critical piece of our work. And so, we do mobile home lending, for instance, and CHT does the mobile home lending program, but we do it in concert with all the NeighborWorks organizations. Remember, Irene was about mobile home issues happening throughout the state, so we were doing on behalf of. So we work in concert with them. So there's the farm worker program as well. So we do a lot of things in collaboration and in support with each other. Here's something that the NeighborWorks folks gave me that shows sort of numbers and impact. It's in your packet as well. In terms of the NeighborWorks of America gives the state of Vermont and its organizations $1.8 million, which enables us to do a lot of different kinds of development projects and support. And these are the results of sort of that work. That ends my presentation. Oh, I don't know if you want to see pictures, but
Well, we always like pictures. We can understand pictures.
yeah, but
I like pictures.
okay. Well, do you want to see them, or should I think?
No, let's go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Sure.
Chris, are you speaking or are we going? Are you just, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have Kathy Byer.
Morning.
Kathy, how are you?
Good. I hope I get this right. I haven't presenta before, so I share my screen, Ron.
Share your screen, you're gonna hit okay. Hey, Ron. It says you have disabled participant screen sharing.
I did, I really did.
Honestly, that's what it's saying.
I will double check that. So I don't even see you on my list. Did you join the meeting?
Yep, yeah.
I can't.
Technology.
I would suggest maybe leaving and then let's try it again. You can.
Kathy's opening up the name saying you're not in.
Oh, this is her computer.
Should I leave?
You're all set.
Should I leave?
Try hitting share screen again.
Try it again.
Okay, you're co-host now, and then what are you using?
Is this one? Not there. That's not
Okay,
right.
so yeah, I would just hit share now.
So is your video disabled? Because you're listed on,
And then
you're listed as a co-host on here, but your video's.
They're just trying to get to the file at this point.
you can click on that place here.
Yeah, you.
Oh, hold on. Oh. I do not know your password, so I will let you. Unlock. There we go. Now we're just gonna click Zoom. And later. Okay. You should be all set. Share. And share.
There you go.
You're just going to view it as a presentation here.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
I could never do this without you.
That's what I'm here for.
Good morning again. I'm Kathy Byer. I'm Senior Vice President for Real Estate Development at Evernorth. And some of you may know my company as Housing Vermont. We were around for over 30 years working mostly in Vermont. But 2 years ago, in the middle of the pandemic, we merged with a sister nonprofit based out of Portland, Maine. And we actually work in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And together, we have raised over $1 billion of equity capital for affordable rental housing for the 3 northern New England states, which has created 15,000 homes. But I'm here today to talk about Vermont. And Evernorth, in terms of a real estate developer, works exclusively in Vermont and always in partnership with Champlain Housing Trust, Cathedral Square Corporation, and what we call our, as Michael noted, the NeighborWorks organizations across the state. So everything we do is always in partnership. And before I dive into the details, I just want to give a framework for how we can think about housing. That is Monument View in Bennington. If anyone's been in Bennington lately, about a half a mile from downtown Bennington. And a decent affordable home is as essential as having clean air to breathe. Everyone needs a secure home so they can lead a good life. Decent affordable homes support our physical and mental well-being. At the heart of it, that is what we're trying to do. And just as government has a role in collectively ensuring that we have clean air to breathe, government also has a role in ensuring we have decent and affordable housing. And the reason government needs to take a role is if we left it to the private marketplace, that would not be happening, which is very evident today in the time of this housing crisis. At the state level, VHCB when VHCB was created, this legislature also made a commitment to perpetual affordability. And that was a huge step. And it has, and the commitment to perpetual affordability has been steadfast. And why is this important? In my work outside of Vermont and looking around the country, there are some states who have not adopted perpetual affordability, and they are losing hundreds of affordable housing units to conversion to the private marketplace. So to make all the work that we put into building the 36 apartments of Stewart Avenue in Colchester or the other properties that Michael showed you could 30 years later be lost. And Vermont has not done that. And the result is that in your community, the housing we build in your community is a resource. It's going to be there. It's not a commodity that, as you heard perhaps on the radio today, that home prices increased 17% over the last year. So that is a fundamental core commitment in the affordable housing community is perpetual affordability. How else does government get involved? The obvious ones is going to be, sorry, this is a little out of order from what I thought, is financing. And I want to just step back a little bit and talk about some of the federal financing. I'm going to talk more about the federal financing than the state financing. And first, I wonder if any of you know what is the largest federal housing program, the biggest by far. Many of us benefit from it. I benefit from it.
The mortgage deduction.
$70 billion. So in all of this work we do, there is the largest federal housing program is the mortgage interest deduction.
Yes.
Is that still true after the standard deduction up to 24,004?
I checked. Thank you for asking that. And I checked yesterday and I believe it is, but I need to do a little more.
Yeah. I know that changed the numbers for
it changed it quite a bit.
Tens of millions of
Yes.
people.
Yeah, that was
Interesting.
Yeah, that was.
I know for me, I no longer deduct.
Yeah. But my company focuses on affordable rental housing. And the tools that you've no doubt heard about in this committee already are the major federal tools are the low-income housing tax credits, the HUD home program through VHCB, the Vermont Community Development Program, which is really a federal program, CDBG, many of us have heard that term before, and then I listed state credits here. And among this list, by far, the largest federal program is the low-income housing tax credit program. So I'm going to try to walk you through that program today because it's a little complicated.
Just to clarify in my head, is Evernorth purely financing, or do you also do the I don't know, development, oversight of construction, the planning and
Yep, great question. We are co-developers. So when we're with Champlain Housing Trust, we work together to put the deal together, permitting, hire the design team, get it to a construction start. And we also stay in as a co-general partner. So we stay in for 15 years and work together to ensure the long-term sustainability of the property. But we don't do property management. And I would say the people who do property management do the hardest work in affordable housing. It's much easier to build the housing than it is to be a good property manager. So the low-income housing tax credit program was created in 1986. And the general concept is actually pretty simple. The basics of real estate development is they have to put together a capital stack that's adequate to finance the construction, right? Like you build a house, you've got a choice, some equity, some debt, and that's how you can build the house. But if your capital stack includes a lot of debt, that puts pressure on the rents, so you can't keep them affordable. So the low-income housing tax credit program allows you to replace some and much of that debt with equity. And I'm just going to show you visually what that might look like in this on the what's called the typical 9%. I'm not going to get too much in the weeds here on this one, but that blue side of the pie is equity. And if this is a typical affordable housing deal that usually has 10 different sources, but what that equity has effectively done is replace debt, and that is the way we can keep the rents affordable. How do we get there? That's where it starts to get to be a little more complicated. So hang in there with me as I try to describe the basics of a low-income housing tax credit partnership. So think about tax credits, right? They're not a grant. They don't write you a check, right? They are a federal tax credit. So you have to find somebody who needs a deduction, right? Who has federal tax liability. And the developer of the bill of affordable housing first applies to the Vermont Housing Finance Agency to get an allocation of these low-income housing tax credits. In this example, the developer was able to get $450,000 of tax credits, but it's a 10-year credit. So it's $4.5 million. It's like, great, right? But Evernorth and Champlain Housing Trust, we have no federal tax liability. We can't use $4.5 million of tax credits. So and this is one of the things Evernorth does, is looks for an investor and says, hey, I got $4.5 million of tax credits. You're going to get them over 10 years. How much cash equity will you give me? And the investor, which is usually banks, almost all the Vermont banks participate in this, as do our large regional banks. And they say, well, we'll give you $4 million today if we can get those $4.5 million of tax credits over a 10-year period. And then they get depreciation if you're familiar with real estate.
And are banks doing that for their own tax liability, or are they lining up other outside?
They do it for their own federal tax liability. There's another reason they do it, which is the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act. These investments help them with their rating on the Community Reinvestment Act. So they're motivated by that as well, but they get a return right now. the return to the investor is around 5 to 6%. So it's a market-based transaction. But in the end, what you have is the renters in the building are happy because their rents are restricted to stay affordable. The owner of the building's happy because we replaced, $4 million of debt with equity, and the investor is happy because they're going to get this return over the period.
And the development of this program, CRA is a federal program, but also this method of funding has been checked and rechecked by the IRS. This is all, this has all been cleared. This isn't like a Ponzi scheme of, paying.
No, it's a quite mature industry now, but when Tom, you mentioned Taylor Street, or I had a photo of, this is Riverbend and Stowe, this is Westbrook Apartments in Lindenville. Each one of these projects is a separate tax credit partnership. So every time if you come to a ribbon cutting, when we complete a project, it is a separate tax credit partnership every single time. And that's kind of the unique thing about this program, but it's been around since 1986. What federal housing production program has lasted this long? I don't think any has lasted this long. And I think the reason it's done well, it has bipartisan support year after year, but also it's this concept of we're bringing together the discipline of the private investors and the commitment on our side as nonprofit housing developers, where our mission is about the affordability of the rents. So it's been a quite successful program, complex as it may be.
Representative Elder?
And so your equity partners, they take the depreciation as well?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, do you know what depreciation schedule they're using? Is it 10 years and they're done, or are they doing Maker 7 years, or like they done before?
Very good question. So it's just our real estate falls under the same rules as other rental housing. And the building is 27 and a half years, okay. And the site work gets a bonus depreciation.
Bonus, yeah. What is it? Is it like a 50% bonus? Is it like that kind of thing?
The site work is, it changed under, it got better for some under the tax legislation under the previous administration. I think it's a year.
Yeah. I would think that 27-year schedule would keep some equity partners away.
They don't have to stay in that long.
They don't?
No.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, they have to stay in 15 years.
I see.
But, and again, so they only have to stay in 15 years, but because every deal we do has VHCB money in it, and the Vermont Housing Finance Agency also has required that if you use these tax credits, you also have to sign up for perpetual affordability. So the investor leaves after 15 years, but this remains as affordable rental housing in perpetuity.
Can I ask one quick one? And then a new investor steps in if they leave?
No, if it's all worked correctly, the private investor leaves, and let's use Champlain Housing Trust and Evernorth are in the deal as general partners. Now we own the whole thing, and actually Evernorth steps out and Champlain Housing Trust becomes the sole owner. And we've done that. We should count up the number of
15, 20 times.
And are you then able to redepreciate it as the owner?
Then we will look at the property. We won't continue to do that because we have no tax liability on the property in particular. I mean, there is depreciation.
Right.
But it has no great benefit to us. Like
interesting.
Got it. We'll look at the property in over 5 or 10 years. We'll say, should we reinvest in a new tax credit, or can we continue to keep it just owned without any additional resources? Usually it's without any additional resources.
Yeah, it's kind of the beauty of the program is that you get to use somebody else's money for 15 years and then they leave. And if you've done well, you have a building that's been well maintained and again has so much less debt that you can continue to operate it at the affordable rents. And
Kathy, we've got running out of time on
Yep.
this block here just a little bit. No, go ahead. We're just gonna, I'll just save Dennis for the end here.
Go ahead.
You sure? I'm almost done. And
I just wanna make sure you get your
Yep.
piece in and then.
Yep, no, I am basically done. So we have 300 apartments under construction across Vermont.
Or the screen didn't advance.
What's that?
It looked like you clicked on another slide, but it didn't change up there.
I didn't, but
Oh, okay.
I can.
Bad.
And we have 590 apartments in 16 different projects across the state, from West Rutland to St. Johnsbury, that are in permitting or pre-development, trying to gather the financing. So this legislature have made significant investments in housing in the last 2 years. And I just, as Michael noted, we're still in this housing crisis, and we do need to see significant investment again to help us get out of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Just really quick, and I might have missed something, but if you own, after 15 years, let's say, and you own that building, do you have to pay property tax, or how does that work?
Good question. All of our properties pay property taxes.
Okay.
And, but there is a state formula that recognizes we aren't taxed as market rate rental. We are taxed based on the fact that our income stream is restricted, right? So we're taxed at basically what our restricted rents are. But it's, in Burlington, we pay a lot.
I did an analysis once of Chittenden County, and because of the concentration of the number of homes we have, we actually pay more per acre than the wealthiest person in Burlington. Just as a sort of, we pay property taxes.
Yeah. And we should. We use the town services. We've always taken that position. The town plows the roads, kids go to school. We should pay property taxes.
That's,
Thank you.
Given that there's a definition of nonprofit housing, there's a thought that there's a belief that they don't pay taxes, and that may be true in certain aspects of the tax code, but when it comes to municipal taxes, thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
I just have a quick question, and that was on one of your slides, LPA. What does LPA stand for?
Limited Partnership Agreement. These are all set up as limited partnerships because the investor comes in as a limited partner, meaning they have no active day-to-day involvement in managing the property whatsoever. That is, the general partners are responsible for that.
Thank you.
All right, one last, Warwick.
So you said you have 580 apartments under development, various stages under development. I assume that a number of those are the same ones that we just heard about with Champlain Housing Trust. And I'm wondering where we hear the total number of units, so we don't double count.
For the state,
Yeah.
we would have to do a little work to dig in that. But the 590 that I referenced are
Statewide.
all 4 or 5 corners of the state.
Just try and.
All right, thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you for coming in. And before we go, I just always like to point out that didn't CHT get a global award once upon a time?
2008 won the World Habitat Award for the Northern Hemisphere for the work we do with shared equity homeownership. And permanent affordability actually was a key part of that award. The fact that when we do housing, we make sure that people can live there forever, they're not displaced after 15 years. The housing units don't go up in cost dramatically, people aren't displaced. So that was a part of all.
The Northern Hemisphere, that's north of Route 2, or?
I think it's the equator in this reference.
Okay.
That's a weather report.
Thank you. All right, committee, let's take off till 10:15, please.
Much better.